Hello my lovelies, Sarah Jane Critchley here, author of A Different Joy, The Parent's Guide to Living Better with Autism, Dyslexia, ADHD and more. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today I want to talk to you about parental stress and the impact of that on our families and our children, especially those with autism, ADHD and other special needs. Now, one of the things that we know is that mothers of autistic children tend to have incredibly high stress levels, and their stress levels are as high as soldiers who are actually on a battlefield. So that made me think a bit around what the outlook of us as parents can often be and whether that's helpful or not. But before we get into that, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what stress is. Everybody thinks stress is a really bad thing. Well, it isn't actually a really bad thing. Too much stress is a bad thing, and it has real solid impacts on the body and on well-being. But too little stress is also a bad thing. If you have no stress at all, you make no progress, you have no impetus, you have no energy, so you need something, you need a bit of oomph, you need a bit of challenge. With no challenge, you have no growth. With no growth, you have a very restricted life. So both for us as parents and also for our children, we need to try and manage that process as best we can. The accent being as best we can. It's very individual. So you kind of need to pay attention to that and see how that works. So the first thing I was going to talk to you about was the outlook that we have, and that has a massive impact on the amount of stress and the way we feel about things. Often, one of the things that I find is that we tend to experience quite a bit of stress because we are having to fight people to get things. So the stress doesn't necessarily come from our children or what they're doing. Often it'll come from us having to navigate a system that's not built for them and doesn't help support them in the way that they need to be supported. And often we don't feel as if we're asking for anything unreasonable, we're just asking for a level playing field for them to be given the same opportunities that everybody else has. But sometimes we have to fight for that. And when you have to fight for that again and again, what happens is your cortisol level increases, your stress level increases, and you feel real physiological effects. Now that matters because when you have that sort of approach to life and you're fighting all the time, you stop looking for cooperative solutions, you stop looking for different ways of doing things. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about how the impact of that plays out. So if you've got that sort of feeling, and you'll come across this as warrior parents who fight. Sometimes you have to do that, but sometimes you don't want to do that, and it shouldn't be necessary. So even when you're in a situation where you're having to challenge somebody, that still doesn't have to be a fight. That can be a conversation, it can be a cooperative way of doing things. Because if you regard it as being a fight, if you're looking at everything as if it's going to be a conflict, then what happens in your body is you will actually develop one of the three main reflexes to stress, which is you'll either fight, which is what we're talking about here, or you'll flight, you'll run away, you'll not want to deal with anything, you won't want to go into school. So for example, if you're having a real issue with a particular school, with your child, you won't want to be anywhere near it. The sight of the school may well make you feel sick. Well, your child's feeling that too. They're feeling that too, they're experiencing that too. And what they're experiencing is their own stress. They will often be picking up on yours. And it's a misnomer. Lots of people say autistic people have no empathy. Well, that's certainly in my experience, that's utterly untrue. And there's quite a bit of research now coming up to say that what autistic people have is actually as much empathy as other people, but they may not just express it in the same way. So lots of people I know are very sensitive to the temperature, to the feeling in a room, I mean emotional temperature, not physical temperature, and would be put off by the fact that they can feel that something not quite right, that something different's happening, but they won't necessarily be able to interpret why that is or to know what to do as a result. Now, if you're looking at a battlefield and you don't know what's going on and you're unarmed and you've no way of interpreting what's going to be safe and what isn't, you are going to hightail it out of there as fast as you possibly can. And that's flight. So when our young people escape, or they run away, or they say, I'm going, that's it, I've had enough, that's what's happening. The other thing you might do, either as a parent or as a child, is you might just freeze. So often if you're working with parents and you're working with families, you'll find there are families who do not want to engage. And that's because they are so stressed, they are so scared, they do not have a way of actually communicating in a cooperative and helpful way. And so they'll just freeze and say, I can't be doing with it. I can't deal with it. It's nothing to do with me. I don't belong there. It's not safe. If you don't feel safe in a place, you can't have that open communication. If you're a professional working with parents, it's your job to make that a safe place for them to be, so that you can work with them to help their young person better. And if you're a parent and you get stuck in that, you need to think through and help yourself through that process gently, so that you can become unstuck again. And it really helps if you understand what this process is, so you can see when you're doing that. I know sometimes I go through these and you kind of have to think, what's happening now? Why am I feeling this way? How could I be different? What can I do differently? Because what happens to your decision-making process when you're stressed out of your mind is, well, what a surprise. We get stupid. Stress makes us stupid. What it does is it diverts all of the blood in your body to your stomach and to your muscles, so that you can run, so you can escape. What it doesn't do is allow your cognitive functions, your brain, your thinking brain, to actually sit down and analyse a situation and work out what might be a sensible, practical way of dealing with it. What it does do is it gives you the part of your brain which is very old, your instinctive limbic brain, just reacts like that. It's much faster, requires no thought, it runs on autonomic reflexes. It's a reflex, it's not a choice, it's a reflex. So you will react very, very quickly, but not necessarily the right way. And if you're not reacting the right way, you won't get the right reaction back. So our decision making is impaired when we're feeling like that. If you're operating at a high level of this sort of stress all the time, then your decision making processes regularly will not be as good as they could be. So we need to recognise, understand and reduce what we're feeling in order to enable us to be functioning properly. And we have to function properly because what happens to our children is dependent upon our ability to advocate and talk on their behalf and to negotiate for them. And yes, sometimes fight for them, but do the negotiation first. And one of the most important parts of that is to prioritise what is most important. When you're in this bit, the most important thing is survival. So when you've got beyond fight, flight and freeze, you can fight, flight and freeze, you can start to think and then you can prioritise. And often when we're really stressed, it may be the tiny things that just make us fly off the handle, that make us overreact, that make us respond in a way that isn't as positive as we'd like it to be. I know when I'm really stressed out and tired, the most stupid things get on my nerves. So I don't know whether the toothpaste tube's been squeezed in the wrong place, or somebody has left something where it's not meant to be, or the thing that I really want to have or to use isn't where it's supposed to be, therefore I can't use it, therefore it's a huge issue. It's not a huge issue at all. What's important is maintaining a relationship that works and helping everyone to function and learn. So that is impaired, and we have to kind of keep thinking about what's actually the most important thing in this interaction. And it could be an interaction between us and our children. It could be an interaction between us as parents and a professional. If you're a professional, it could be you're really stressed out because you've just stopped a fight in another classroom and now you're having to come in and talk to a parent who's being difficult. And they're being difficult because they're experiencing very high levels of stress, because they're not quite sure how to deal with it, and they're in this fight, flight and freeze thing, because their decision-making process is impaired. And if you're the person with the cool head, you are the person who can lead that. So you can make a huge difference here. And when you can do that, it's fantastic. I was reading a thing this morning about a lady who used careful positive framing for every interaction. She set an intention when she went into a meeting with a parent, any parent, that when she came out of that meeting, the parent would be calm, happy and thankful that they'd been able to have that conversation. And it didn't work immediately, but because she was less reactive and less responsive, less easily flustered, less easily aroused in terms of irritation and being cross and coming over as someone who's very authoritarian, she got much better results. And that was because she set a positive intention for that meeting. So that's really important. The relationship is almost always more important than the specific outcome, and the relationship will help you to get the outcome that you want. And the thing that occurred to me this morning is the day of the London Marathon, so big ups to Kevin for doing that today. The thing around running a marathon, it feels like, as a parent of a child with special needs, as a parent of autistic children, often you kind of have to do this constant monitoring, measuring, improving, working. You have to be on it all the time. It's like running a marathon, but it's kind of like running a marathon every week. Not once a year, every week. And that can be exhausting. And our children feel the same way because they're having to process things that other children don't have to process automatically. It is exhausting. So in order to be able to cope with that, you've got to be fit. So you kind of have to put yourself in training. You wouldn't run a marathon having sort of sat on the sofa all year and think, right, okay, today it's Sunday and the marathon's on, I'm going to go. And off you go. You wouldn't do that. And if you did try to do that, you probably wouldn't get very far. So people who are actually competing in the marathon today, who compete in all those things, who are operating at Olympic standard, train for it all the time. They'll eat really well. They'll exercise really well. They'll pay attention to sleep. They'll make sure that they're prioritising the things that keep them fit. And that's a key part of what we need to do. If you can do that, then what you'll do is you won't be reducing the things that cause stress, but what you will be able to do is to increase your capacity and your ability to cope with what comes your way. Because stuff happens. We all know that stuff happens. And sometimes in life it isn't dealing with schools or even that's the most stressful thing that happens. Because whilst you've got all that going on, you may fall ill. Another member of your family may fall ill. You may lose a member of your family. Someone might die. These things happen. You just have to be extra fit and vigilant. Think of yourself as an Olympic athlete. You're going to win this race and you're going to do it. We are called to higher levels. We've got to be fit to do them. I hope that really helps you. I hope it serves you. If you come to this anywhere other than through the Different Joy Club, then hop on over to my website at www.differentjoy.com. I'm Sarah Jane Critchley and I look forward to speaking to you next week. Take care. Bye.